Hi, gardeners. It's another sunny day in Portland, Oregon, and I am here to do that walkthrough that I've been promising I would do through the garden that I'm cultivating with my neighbors to the south. About 4 years ago, 2021, I did a series of videos that chronicled the development of this garden. And so now, 4 years later, 2025, we're going to do just a walkthrough and an update in terms of um, what's happening in this garden now. And so here we are, 4 years later. The garden has been growing on. We've had some successes. We've had some setbacks. But generally speaking, we're really having a good time in terms of how the garden's coming together. And I'm going to walk you through a little bit more closely. But I just want to give you a little walkthrough this way so you can just kind of see how the two properties interact. So we're walking along my front street. I garden on a 50 by 100-foot lot in Portland, Oregon. And my neighbor, of course, has a lot next to me, also 50 by 100 feet. So together, this front garden that we're walking by now, here's my front garden. I've done a tour recently where we do a full walkthrough my front garden, and you can watch that if you'd like. Kind of a slow walk and talk through this entire area. But this section down here to the south of us is actually on my neighbor's property. It's another 100-foot, 50 feet down to the corner. So all told, it's about 100 feet across the front of the property that I'm gardening. And I'm doing the full parking strip here and the slope up there. Now, when this garden was initially created, and again, there's that series of, it's a four-part series where I take you from bare dirt to and talk you through the plant selections that we made and why we made them. And so you can watch that video series to kind of see where this garden started. So since that time, the kind of strategies have changed a little bit in the sense that uh, rather than my neighbor kind of doing the daily upkeep or the ongoing garden development on this garden, it has worked out that I'm doing it. For them, they're really excited about the prospect of, having that done and kind of allowing me to create a continuation of my garden down the block and incorporating their space. And for me, I like it too. It enlarges my garden and allows me to kind of, uh, uh, spread my wings and plant more plants and gives me a place to uh, just, continue this crazy plant passion that I have. So one of the things that has happened is because this garden, we had our initial plant selection, and some of those are in here, and I'll look at those with you as we go through. But the other thing that really is happening, and one of the reasons that the two gardens knit together so well, is that the fill-in plants, the really important layering that creates a garden that's lush and full and interesting and varied. Um, a lot of these are divisions from my garden, which creates kind of this visual connection between the two spaces, where with the initial plant selection, there was a little bit of that, like these roses were part of the original plan 4 years ago, and I have some in my front parking strip. and then one up there on the slope. So there was always a bit of a visual connection between the two. But now, not only do we have repetition between some of these primary plants, like this is a rose called Oh So Easy Paprika. The more vibrantly colored one back here is Oh So Easy Hot Paprika. And that barberry right here, that's Berberis Orange Rocket, a Caryopteris, and a smaller barberry. Those were all kind of part of the original plan and were kind of selected because they also, well, the barberry and the roses connected to my garden down there. And so that was always kind of something that was of interest, is kind of making sure that the two spaces, work together. But this one was its own thing. But now, as I have started filling in all of the layers and gardening in such a way that I am covering the ground, because when I'm maintaining a garden, what I want to do is I want it to be packed full of plants, because that's actually one of the best ways to make my maintenance kind of manageable. If the ground is covered, I have fewer weeds. And that is definitely where we are getting to on this garden here, is that I'm getting it pretty darn full the way that I like to garden. And in these areas, I'm not fighting the weeds, and it's kind of getting that kind of lush and full look that I'm interested in doing. Now, I mentioned that we had successes and setbacks. So this here, I am just loving how lush and beautiful that is, how how it just flows down the block, and how the two properties are kind of connected in that way. I couldn't be happier with all of this. And many of these plants go back to that original planting scheme. Now, when I did the plant selection, I made a miscalculation when I initially planted the parking strip here. And what I did is I treated the whole 50-foot strip as full sun. And in actuality, that's not what it ended up being. I kind of just I made an error, and now I'm correcting for that. So this full sun area was always full sun, but in here, the original planting scheme, I am reworking it. Reworking it because I used the same palette of plants here as I did down there. And as you may or may not be able to see from the video today, the growing conditions are different. This is quite shady here in the middle. And so I am working on removing some of the plants that were not the best choice and replacing them with some better choices. So through here, I have been working on revising this section of the garden, and I've removed some of the true sun lovers that were just not really the right plant for in here. Like I had this Senecio, which I really love. I love that felty gray foliage, the yellow flowers, the vigorous habit, the drought tolerant, but it's a sun lover through and through. And so in here, while it was surviving, it kind of didn't look right. And so I had one here, and I removed it. And instead, I am growing some plants that I needed to find a home for from my garden. So this is a beautiful fern that I've been growing on in a container, and I moved it in here the other day, and it's going to be so happy here. This is Dryoperatus, uh, the king. I'll put the name up on the screen, but it's a fantastic fern. And I also had a rhododendron that was looking for a home that I'd been growing on in a container. So I've got this guy. So I put him in. And a mahonia, again, that I used to have in my garden and ran out of room. So I put it over here. And this one is, after sitting around for a little while, it's finally taking hold and it's going to um, do very well in there. That is Mahonia marble. The other plant that I have in here that are transplants from my garden, the shady parts of my garden, is this variegated iris. This is Iris fetidissima variegata, not to be confused with Iris pallida, which we have down here, which I'll show you. These are different plants. This is an iris that I dearly love for sun, and it has, I already deadheaded it this year, but it's got purple, soft purple blooms that are fragrant and really just a great plant, but it's a full-on sun lover. And this is a sunny spot at this far end. And at first glance, you might think that these are the same plant, but they aren't. I have created divisions of that Iris fetidissima variegated, and I'm just going to create this kind of river of evergreen foliage that goes through there. I've also been working on covering the ground with Virginia and Wolfenii, let's see, Wolfenii schwarzii. Again, I'll put the name on the screen because I think I'm mispronouncing that. But I am working on covering the ground in this section as much as I have it covered in my garden and then the garden behind me, because again, that is my maintenance strategy. That's what makes it manageable, is cover the ground versus having bare ground, because I struggle with weeds, weeds, weeds. This bare ground, and I weeded this just the other day. So that was all pretty fast. We took a look at this new section of the garden and did an update of how it's going. And some of those sections I went through pretty darn fast. But you know, gardening is an ongoing process. So next steps for this garden are going to be, you know, keep on keeping on. And the primary goals that I'm working to, you know, address are cover the ground. Covering the ground is a strategy that I've used in my garden that has helped me immensely just kind of keep weeds at bay. Plus, it's aesthetically kind of the style of garden that I like to do. So there are some sections of this garden that are still empty, blank, and open, and so that's a very big priority. Uh, and then additionally, you know, we went through the garden pretty quickly, and so I have been doing some videos where I've gone in and I've looked at some of the plant combinations that we kind of go past pretty quickly in some of these more fast-moving videos. And I slow down and I look at each of those plants individually and talk about the plant selection process a little bit more in depth. So we'll be doing that. So again, you know, we're just kind of keeping on ongoing garden development and and refining the plant selection, making some changes where needed to ensure that the cultural match of the plants selected and the site is in sync. And so that process has begun. That process is ongoing. So I hope you'll join me and check back in. I will try to include progress on this garden more regularly as I do tours through, you know, my full garden. Will also be kind of coming down the block here and taking a look at how this garden is coming along. So thanks for following along. See you next time.